Welcome to Empower and Evolve, and I'm your host, Dunstan, and thanks for coming into today's episode. Now, this podcast is designed for those looking to break free from stagnation and enhance their well-being through actionable insights and inspiring stories. So you'd never miss an episode, hit that follow button and follow us through our social media accounts. Now, if you find value in our discussions, consider sharing this podcast with friends who you think might benefit listening today. Now let's get started on this journey of empowerment and transformation. Hi, Dun here, and thanks for coming back to Empower and Evolve. Now, in the next few days, we will be celebrating one national observance holiday, which is the Day of Valor. Now, for most people, especially my age, we would understand and really remember what that day was. And our forefathers, my uncle, my grandparents, actually, my great grandparents were a witness to that as well. Now, for the younger generation, you might not know so much about this. But for today, we'll take a little history tour and pick up lessons from that incident so that we can make the most out of the Day of Valor. So, just like I always say, grab your cup of coffee or your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Now, a little bit about history, right? It's like I mentioned earlier. The Day of Valor, officially known as the Araw ng Kagitingan, is a national observance in the Philippines, right? It commemorates the fall of Bataan, which is a province here in the Philippines, to the Japanese troops during World War II. So that's around 1946, 44 to 46, if I'm not mistaken. It's officially celebrated every April 9, which is the start of the Bataan Death March. Now, you might be asking, what's this Death March, right? Well, this was a march of around 105 kilometers. And this involves about 75,000 wounded, sick, hungry Filipino American soldiers who surrendered during the time. And this march actually caused about a little over 10,000 deaths due to hunger, sickness, fatigue, and, based on articles I've read, they would say that, let's say, if you are not able to continue the march, whether you accidentally injured yourself or you're just too tired, right? The soldiers would actually kill you right on the spot. So that's how brutal it was. And, it was a sign of, they were prisoners of war, pretty much. Now, fast track to 2025, we think about what is valor, right? It's defined as the courage or bravery, especially in the face of danger or adversity. Of course, right now there's no world war that's happening, and hopefully not anytime soon in this generation or the next few generations after, right? But when I think about the Day of Valor and what you can pick up from there, it's not just about the grand acts like what happened in World War II, right? Where the Philippines had to defend themselves to invaders. But it can also be found in everyday actions, from your neighbor to the person on the street, where you can see courage and resilience. The same two behaviors you would see for those brave 75,000 men, both American and Filipinos, who took that death march. So, how can we actually make the most out of it? Right? I mean, diving down or diving into the meat of things. Right? I have 5 actionable steps that you can do. Of course, the most obvious ones, and I think everyone should be doing this, right? Because it's a national event, is to reflect on the historical event, right? I know that every year there's a wreath laying in Bataan to commemorate the fallen, right, during that World War II, and particularly the ones who died during the Death March. Um, and when you talk about that historical event, of course there are heroes, and of course we're not. Don't limit yourself to the Death March itself. Of course, we have heroes as well locally who has demonstrated valor, right? You may wanna read their stories to try to understand, you know, how life was, what were they doing, to show that resilience, right? Uh, to show those bravery, or those acts of bravery, and try to ask yourself, is there something I can do today that I can mimic the same behaviors, right? And which moves us to actionable step number two. You know, appreciate everyday valor. I mentioned earlier that nowadays, of course, there's no war, but people can and still manifest valor. Growing up, I remember there was a tagline that overseas Filipino workers are your new heroes, right? And when I think about that growing up, especially when I was a kid, I was asking myself, how could they be heroes? They're not fighting off anyone. They're just working outside the country, right? But as I grew older and I've heard stories, even knowing a couple of overseas Filipino workers myself, you know, your biggest battle is being afraid of the unknown. Of course, you're in a foreign country. You don't know anyone there. You don't know their culture, right? You not being with your family, that homesickness. And that's a battle they fight every single day. I mean, good thing nowadays, of course, there's technology. But when you think about that, yeah, imagine 2 decades ago, almost 3 decades ago, doing an international phone call is very expensive, and that's your only means, aside from snail mail, to reach out to your loved ones, right? And that battle of being able to provide for their family members. That's your overseas Filipino workers. But when you look at everyday activities, everyday people, I mean, the more obvious ones are your law enforcement officers, your soldiers, your policemen, your naval, your air force, right? Of course, their job is to defend the country and make sure there's peace and order. But even as and me citing a recent incident, I think that happened 2 months ago. There was a traffic enforcer somewhere in a province here in Bulacan where I don't know what happened, what was happening with the driver. He pretty much ran through the traffic enforcer. And it was a 2 lane street, 5 lane, 5 intersections, 5 point intersection. The guy just literally just flew to the windshield and to the back of the car. Right? He died. And unfortunately, he died. But it was him doing the traffic to make sure that everything was going well in that very busy intersection. Right? And that's an act of valor. Right? Every day you're putting yourself out there under the heat of the sun, the heavy rain, make sure the traffic is okay, there's no road accidents, and you know, sadly had to go through that incident, right? There are other professions that show everyday valor, but you know, I guess the easiest one, and a lot of people actually will miss out when you want to appreciate and identify everyday valor, is your own family members. Your mom, your dad, your siblings, your elder siblings was working, right? No. There was this tagline here in the Philippines for a coffee ad commercial. And I'll say it in Tagalog and first I'll translate in English. The tagline goes, para kanino ka bumabangon? I mean, this is not a direct translation, but what's your purpose of waking up today and go through the challenges of, the day? I mean, that's a battle in itself. And when you think about that question, which is very, very strong, if I would say so myself, I love that ad because it just manifested that valor and showing the behavior of that resilience, that bravery to go through every day doesn't have to mean you have to be holding guns or you have to be in the law enforcement. And it's just could be the regular Joe who wakes up every day for his family, who's the breadwinner, right? And that's bravery in itself. So at least say thank you, taking from that example, say thank you for them being able to cook food for you, being able to provide for you, them making sure, like the traffic enforcers making sure that the traffic is okay, that there's no congestion, there's no road accidents, right? And it actually goes a long way for them. Trust me. Now, the third actionable step or actionable item that you can do is more on a personal level, right? Learn to practice personal courage. Now you might be asking me, we're talking about heroes. Why are we talking about personal courage? Right? I always believe that every person is a potential hero. You can be a hero, and it doesn't mean being a hero is putting yourself in the line of danger, right? Or trying to catch a bullet for someone else. That's too extreme, right? But just trying to be able to overcome your own personal battles, right? Whether you're trying something new, something you're afraid of trying, right? Or maybe standing up and speaking in a difficult situation, right? These small things actually helps you build your confidence, build that bravery, that courage that you have to become a hero. Makes sense, right? The fourth one is engaging in community service. You know, I always believe that as an individual, we all are required. I mean, that's just me. Don't hate me. Again, this is my personal belief that we should have social responsibility. So it may involve actual community service or volunteer work, right? Maybe supporting causes or contributing to the community. But what I would like to aim out here is that if you are supporting the community that you're living in, you're building your relationships with your community. You're building your network within your community. And who knows? Maybe it would be you on the other end needing help. And of course, because you've been able to establish that relationship with your neighbors, it's easy for them and it's easier for you to seek help from your neighbor or from the community that you're in. Right? It's a fair trade. Whether they reciprocate it to you or not, I always believe that it gets paid forward. One way or another, someone in that wide universe will pay it forward back to you. So think about that. And last but not the least is you cultivate your resilience. Right? When you cultivate when you cultivate your resilience here, right? I mean, talking about, I've mentioned resilience in one of my old episodes. I think 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe last year. It involves you practicing mindfulness, you practicing self care, right? And a couple of stress management techniques, right? Because as you go through your daily battles, you will always have stress. You may be winning battles or you may lose battles every single day that you wake up. But what matters here is that your mindfulness, you go back to the drawing board if, let's say, you failed in this battle and try to figure out what you did wrong or what you think you could do better next time, right? While at the same time, of course, don't burn yourself to the ground. Take care of your health, get enough sleep, get enough nutrition, exercise, right? And of course, you're taking care of your mental health, so that you'd be more present when you go through your daily battles, right? And when you think about that, resilience is not only beneficial for you in terms of your daily battles, it helps you to build your courage, your determination, your agility, your adaptability, and so many things that is connected to building your resilience. And that's what we believe here in Empower and Evolve, right? That, every day is a journey that you can be able to make yourself better, right? So, as we close today's episode, remember that Valor is not just about the grand acts. It's about everyday challenges and the resilience that you build for yourself and how you manifest your resilience, how you manifest gratitude for the other people around you that also go through their daily battles and manifest their resilience and their valor to make the world a better place. So that, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And remember, here at Empower and Evolve, our goal is to help you become a better version of you. Stay safe. I'll catch you next week. Bye for now. Hey buddy, thank you for joining us on this transformative journey of empowerment and growth. Now remember, it's not just about evolving. It's about embracing that incredible power within you to become the best version of yourself. Keep striving for greatness, because together, we can create a world where empowerment knows no bounds. And if you find value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with someone who could use that little inspiration. Until next time, stay empowered, stay inspired, and keep shining brightly on your path to evolution. With Empower and Evolve, you have the tools to unleash your potential and rewrite your story. Let's continue to evolve together.